And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In China, a flying car takes its first test flight. In Saudi Arabia,
the speed and scale with which Chinese companies can get these projects off the ground is breathtaking.
Flying cars are no longer just ideas from science fiction. China has officially released a flying car for only $4,999, and it's already catching global attention. At a price lower than most smartphones or electric bikes, this vehicle isn't a concept or a one-off prototype. It's real, and it's ready. While other countries are still stuck in testing phases or debating safety rules, China is moving fast. This new flying car could completely change the way people think about transportation, but here's the big question. Is the world actually ready for flying cars to go mainstream? Let's take a closer look at what this $999 flying car can really do, and why it might be the beginning of a new era in personal travel. Meet the Xpang X2. While most of us still struggle with parallel parking, China's Xpang X2 has already lifted off, literally. In a sleek unmanned test flight over Dubai, the X2 didn't just make a scene, it made history. Developed by Xpeng Aero HT, the two-seater electric vehicle rose vertically like a helicopter but looked like something straight out of a Marvel movie. No runways, no pilot, just a silent ascent into the sky. This isn't a prototype gathering dust in a hangar. The X2 is real, it's fully electric, and it's already slicing through the air. Designed with vertical takeoff and landing capabilities, the X2 doesn't need a runway or a helipad, it just goes up. 1 minute it's sitting idle, the next it's hovering above ground like magic. Except there's no illusion here, only the latest leap in engineering. For decades, flying cars existed only in daydreams, tucked beside jetpacks and teleportation in the maybe someday file. But Xpeng just dusted off that idea and turned it into something tangible. With the X2, what once seemed like science fiction has edged into the realm of daily commute potential. This isn't just a new gadget, it's a genuine shift in how we might move. Of course, skepticism still lingers. People rolled their eyes at the Wright brothers too. But today, airports hum with more activity than shopping malls. Flying cars might be facing the same slow start mockery, but the applause is coming. And soon, the skies won't be limited to planes. The X2 can fly for up to 25 minutes at speeds reaching 80 miles per hour. Sure, it's not breaking sound barriers, but for a test flight in a vehicle built for civilians? That's a serious flex. The real win here is what the X2 represents, an actual functioning flying prototype designed for everyday people, not just military missions or movie stunts. And this isn't some flimsy concept model. It's the 5th generation, made with carbon fiber, which means it's both featherlight and durable enough to handle repeated use without falling apart mid-flight. And then there's the design. You can't ignore how good this thing looks. The teardrop shape gives it that smooth, wind-cutting efficiency, while the fully enclosed cockpit makes it feel like a proper aircraft, not just a drone you can squeeze into. The aggressive headlights and clean aerodynamic frame scream sci-fi realness. It wouldn't be out of place in Tony Stark's hangar, and yet here it is, flying above real-world cities like Dubai. Speaking of Dubai, the test flight there wasn't just for show. It was part of the China Langfang International Economic and Trade Fair, with the demo taking place at Beijing Daxing International Airport. Because of course, China went big with the backdrop. The government is now heavily invested in the so-called low-altitude economy, which is exactly what it sounds like, claiming the airspace just above your daily commute and turning it into a whole new transportation layer. This low-altitude zone sits below traditional commercial flight paths, but above the mess of city traffic, and it's quickly becoming prime real estate for flying taxis, drones and electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles like the X2. Instead of sitting bumper to bumper during rush hour, imagine rising just above it all. No horns, no stoplights, just a direct line through the sky. Of course, there's still the question of whether all of this can actually function in real life. Cities aren't exactly mapped out for aerial lanes, rooftop helipads, or mid-air intersections. There's also the mountain of logistics, safety rules, flight regulations, insurance, infrastructure, and, of course, affordability. All of it still hangs up in the air, quite literally. But here's the thing, airplanes didn't start as practical either. They were loud, slow, dangerous, and expensive. The X2 might seem flashy today, but if the right infrastructure follows, it could change the very nature of commutes, shipping, and even emergency services. After dominating the electric vehicle market on the ground, Chinese companies like Xpeng are now setting their sights on the skies. The X2's successful flight is a sign that China plans to lead in the race toward airborne personal transport. And considering how fast their tech sector moves, that future might be closer than anyone expected. The X2's test flight is a wake-up call. Flying cars are no longer hypothetical. They're happening, and they look pretty awesome doing it. Imagine getting across town for an emergency or escaping for a scenic flight, all without traffic, without fuel, and without guilt. That's the promise behind the Xpang X2, a flying car that feels more like a sci-fi upgrade than a real-world vehicle. But it's very real, and it's flying. Whether you're a tech geek or just someone who's tired of sitting in bumper-to-bumper purgatory, the X2 might just be the car, or rather, aircraft you didn't know you needed. The Xpang X2 offers two driving modes: manual for those who like a bit of thrill and control, and autonomous for anyone who'd rather push a button and let the car do the work. And yes, the autonomous mode really works. Officials in Dubai saw it with their own eyes during its first public flight, which was a fully evaluated performance that passed every safety and risk check. That alone makes this more than a cool tech toy. It's a potential shift in how we think about everyday transportation. The debut of the X2 in Dubai wasn't a secret test run, it was a headline event. The vehicle took off from Skydive Dubai, with the Palm Jumeirah serving as a cinematic backdrop, and more than 150 guests watching, including high-ranking officials from the Chinese consulate and leaders from Dubai's tourism and business sectors. The location wasn't random either. Dubai has earned its reputation as a global innovation hub, and this flight only added to that image. The Dubai Civil Aviation Authority granted the project a special flying permit after Xpeng Aero HT completed a rigorous risk assessment. For a machine that looks like it belongs in a Marvel movie, the X2 passed every boring but essential test to make sure it's safe to actually fly in the real world. That alone speaks volumes. Brian Gu, vice chairman and president of Xpeng, acknowledged that Dubai was the ideal stage for this moment. He called it a city where bold ideas and innovation meet, which made it the perfect location for the X2's big reveal. Meanwhile, Hassan Al-Hashimi, acting president of the Dubai International Chamber of Commerce, described the flying car as more than just a product. To him, the X2 represented ambition, vision, and the kind of bold steps needed to lead the next generation of mobility, over a decade in the making. What many don't know is that Xpeng Aero HT didn't come up with this overnight. The company has been quietly working on flying cars since 2013. In that time, they've built multiple research centers across China, slowly refining the technology while the rest of the world debated whether flying cars were even possible. Their first public flight actually happened back in 2022, also in Dubai, and each step since then has brought them closer to a global release. Now, Xpeng is moving beyond research and testing. The company plans to begin taking orders for the X2 by the end of the year. The price tag remains a mystery for now, but that hasn't stopped the buzz. Anticipation is growing, not just among investors and engineers, but regular people who are starting to imagine what it might be like to own something that takes off from the driveway and lands at work. The X2 may have started as an idea in a lab, but after its successful debut in Dubai and support from global officials, it's gaining serious momentum. This flight is the beginning of something that could completely reshape how humans move around the planet. When a vehicle like the Xpeng X2 lifts off the ground, it's not just defying gravity. It's challenging the entire concept of modern transportation. Over the next 50 years, flying cars could become as familiar as rideshare apps, slotting themselves into a new kind of economy, one that exists just a few hundred meters above our heads. But how practical is all this? Let's unpack it. In China, the term low-altitude economy refers to the industries and services that operate below 3,000 meters. This includes flying cars, of course, but also drone delivery systems, emergency air services, aerial tourism, and short-range commuter flights. It sounds like a scene from the Jetsons, but it's already in motion. With heavy backing from the Chinese government, this sector is expected to grow rapidly, projected to hit over 1 trillion yuan. That's about 138 billion US dollars by 2026. So far, over 26 provinces in China are drawing up plans to bring these technologies into their everyday systems. From daily commutes to hospital deliveries, air-based services are beginning to integrate into real life. That said, it's not all smooth flying. There's still a lot of catching up to do in terms of infrastructure, air traffic systems, and consistent regulations. Right now, it's a bit like the Wild West of the skies. Still, companies like Xpang, Geely's Aerofugia, and EHang are racing to turn concepts into reality, investing in research and pushing for national standards. The idea of personal air travel can feel a bit terrifying when you realize it might mean soaring 1 kilometer above ground in something not much bigger than a compact car. But the tech is catching up fast, and the results are hard to ignore. To understand just how real this could become, it helps to look at what's already happening with drones. Take a recent example from Shanghai, where a white drone carrying a cargo of fresh seafood launched from an offshore platform. This wasn't a stunt. It replaced an overnight ferry trip with a 3-hour flight, ensuring the catch arrived fresh and on time. And that's not just a win for seafood lovers. It's proof that low-altitude air delivery can be faster, cleaner, and more efficient than traditional methods. These drones come in all shapes and sizes, from small personal ones to industrial-grade aircraft, and they're now handling everything from logistics to human transport. They're part of an emerging system that's already affecting industries. For example, upscale restaurants that rely on high-quality ingredients now see drone delivery as a game-changer. Where flying cars fit into all this? Flying cars like the Xpang X2 are expected to follow the same trajectory, starting out as impressive prototypes and gradually becoming indispensable. While drone delivery is already slashing transport times and expanding access to remote areas, flying cars will likely do the same for passengers, especially in congested cities where road travel can take hours. With real estate markets slowing down and other traditional industries losing steam, China is turning to the skies for its next economic boom. The government's bet on the low-altitude economy is about building a new framework for consumer activity, trade, and urban development. And flying cars are right at the center of that vision. For now, they're still in the early stages, and challenges remain. But if drones can deliver seafood faster than boats and medical supplies faster than trucks, then flying cars might not be too far behind improving their worth. When China's aviation regulators decided to loosen restrictions on airspace below 300 meters, it was an open invitation for the drone industry to take off. Quite literally. What followed was a wave of innovation across the country. Suddenly, smaller drones were being used for everything from crop spraying in rural farmlands to capturing cinematic wedding photos in scenic towns. And this wasn't some niche experiment. These were real services reaching everyday people. China's central government is not watching from the sidelines. In fact, it's betting big on the low-altitude economy. This sector has already grown to 56 billion yuan, and in 2021 alone, it posted a growth rate north of 30%. That kind of acceleration doesn't happen by accident. In the same year, the government made it official, labeling the low-altitude economy as a strategic priority. The results came quickly. In just 5 years, the number of companies involved in this industry jumped by 33%. Revenue soared to 500 billion yuan by 2023, which is roughly 70.8 billion US dollars. And the projections? Even more ambitious. By 2030, this sector is expected to hit a jaw-dropping 2 trillion yuan. A big part of this success stems from the loosening of airspace controls. With more room to operate, businesses rushed in to offer creative services like aerial sightseeing tours, luxury helicopter rides, and city leisure flights for burned-out urbanites desperate to escape the grind. While numbers are impressive, what really drives this movement are the people. Take Kwai Sitong, a university student who booked a flight in the same model aircraft she had seen on a popular Chinese TV drama. For her, the ride marked a turning point in her life. She described the flight as a symbol of regaining control after a tough breakup. These kinds of stories are proof that the low-altitude economy isn't just a tech trend, but a cultural one. And beyond the cities, the tech is even more essential. In rural areas, domestically produced drones are now widely used for pesticide spraying. This solves a major problem in farming regions where manual labor is scarce. Some drone pilots have even turned it into a full-blown career, with earnings reaching over 300,000 yuan per year. Sustainability is also taking center stage. With the country already leading in electric vehicles, it now sees a chance to repeat that success in the skies. China is aggressively pushing for the development of electric aircraft, which would make low-altitude aviation cleaner and quieter. The government is doing more than just cheering from the sidelines. It's helping to build the entire ecosystem. From advanced flight software to locally sourced aviation materials, a domestic supply chain is coming together fast. This shift is beginning to answer the age-old question about flying cars. Are they actually possible? Well, if drones can handle crop spraying, logistics, and even romantic getaways, maybe personal flying vehicles aren't as far-fetched as they used to seem. In fact, they're already landing. China's most jaw-dropping move came when it unveiled its first ever flying car. And no, it's not priced like a luxury yacht. This thing costs just 4,999 US dollars. At a high-profile launch ceremony attended by major officials, yes, including President Xi Jinping, China made it clear it wasn't here to play. The vehicle, now officially dubbed the SkyDrive X5, comes equipped with traditional wheels, retractable wings, and vertical takeoff capabilities. Basically, it drives like a car but flies like a drone. With a top speed of 150 miles per hour and a flight range of 200 miles on a single charge, it's built for more than just buzz. What's wild is that this price point actually puts the vehicle within reach of everyday consumers, not just billionaires with helipads. Industry experts say it could be a turning point. If production can scale up, it might redefine commuting as we know it. No more hours stuck in traffic, no more racing the clock to catch a train. It could actually become normal for city residents to fly over their daily gridlock. In China, the future of transportation is no longer up in the air. It's literally flying over traffic. While other countries are still arguing about drone laws and debating whether flying cars belong in sci-fi movies, China is quietly building a low-altitude empire. These aircraft, known as electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, are about to become as common as a cab. They're cheaper, cleaner, and quieter than helicopters, and the Chinese government is betting big on them. EVs are a practical solution. They produce less noise, cost less to operate, and cut down on emissions. In fact, studies suggest they could use 60% less energy and emit 90% fewer pollutants than traditional helicopters. As urban areas grow more crowded and polluted, these quieter, cleaner alternatives are becoming less of a luxury and more of a necessity. The best way to describe an eVTOL? Imagine a giant drone with a cockpit. It can lift off vertically, fly across town, and land without needing a runway. And unlike helicopters, it won't break your eardrums or bankrupt your wallet. The difference between helicopters and these flying EVs is similar to the gap between gas-guzzling sedans and sleek Teslas. At least that's how the vice president of Vataxi, a major eVTOL startup in China, described it. This shift isn't just cosmetic, it's a full-on transportation upgrade. With fewer mechanical parts and electric motors, these vehicles are easier to maintain and far more eco-friendly. The idea is to build an entirely new way to move people and goods, not just faster, but smarter. Shenzhen is basically EV headquarters now. In the tech-heavy province of Guangdong, the city of Shenzhen is leading the charge. This is the same place that gave the world drone giant DJI, so it's no surprise that it's also at the center of the flying car movement. Local governments there are backing the tech with real money and support. They're launching test flights, laying down the infrastructure, and preparing the skies for takeoff. This is a coordinated effort to build an ecosystem. By focusing on sustainability and innovation, Shenzhen is aiming to become the blueprint for how modern cities can adapt to airborne travel. Think of it as a silent revolution in the sky. One of the biggest breakthroughs in this space came when Autoflight's Prosperity aircraft completed a successful cross-sea flight from Shenzhen to Zhuhai. What usually takes 2 hours by car. This aircraft did it in just 20 minutes, and the ticket only costs around 300 yuan, far cheaper than a regular helicopter ride. That's the real game changer. Operating costs for eVTOLs are only about 15% of what it takes to keep a helicopter in the air. That means these vehicles could soon be as affordable as calling a rideshare. The dream of hopping in a flying cab to skip rush hour traffic? That's not some Jetsons fantasy anymore. It's becoming a serious option for daily commuters. One name you'll hear a lot in this industry is EHang. They're not just building flying cars, they're getting them certified. EHang became the first company to receive an airworthiness certificate from China's aviation authority for a 2-passenger eVTOL. That stamp of approval is more than just paperwork. It signals to the world that these machines are ready for business. Recently, EHang also pulled off a pilotless flight, showing just how close we are to full automation in the skies. And with over 1,200 international pre-orders already locked in, the company believes its on-demand air taxis will be in regular use within the next 5 years. Of course, the sky isn't entirely clear just yet. While the vehicles are getting sleeker and safer, the batteries inside them are still playing catch-up. Current energy densities limit how far and how long these aircraft can fly. That's a big hurdle for an industry that wants to replace long car rides and commuter trains. Safety is another serious concern. Extensive testing is needed to ensure these flying taxis don't just look good in demos, but perform flawlessly when lives are at stake. Regulators are taking a careful, slow-burn approach. According to most estimates, we won't see widespread commercial use of eVTOLs until at least 2035. But that's not a bad thing. The delay gives manufacturers time to refine their tech and prove their reliability. It also gives cities a chance to prepare, both in the air and on the ground. Despite the challenges, the money is pouring in. More than 85% of China's investments in low-altitude aviation are now going straight into eVTOL development. That's not just a trend, that's a commitment. Venture capital is flowing fast into this high-altitude race. Companies like Aerofuja and Volant Aerotech have become magnets for investment, and major players in China's electric vehicle sector are also jumping in. Xpeng Motors, one of the country's leading EV brands, has spun off Xpeng Aerot, with plans to mass-produce eVTOL's vehicles by 2026. The target price? Roughly 2 million yuan, which is expensive, sure, but cheaper than most private helicopters. With this financial push, China is fast-tracking a future where flying cars aren't just for billionaires or movie scenes, but a feasible upgrade to urban mobility. China isn't rushing passengers into the skies. Instead, regulators have outlined a deliberate safety-first development plan. It starts with low-risk cargo flights in suburban areas, where there's less population and fewer complications. This gives manufacturers the chance to gather real-world data, rack up flight hours, and build public trust before launching human transportation in busier urban zones. A perfect example of this strategy in action is Autoflight's Prosperity eVTOL. It recently completed a 70-kilometer cross-sea flight between Shenzhen and Zhuhai without passengers, proving that cargo transport is a useful stepping stone in the larger plan. The vehicle zipped across bodies of water that would take 2 hours to cross by car, completing the trip in just 20 minutes. Regulators know they can't afford to gamble with public safety. By keeping things methodical, they're trying to ensure the technology earns its wings before it takes on city skies. Money and government support are great, but public trust is everything. The flying car industry still faces a major challenge: making people believe this technology is not only real, but safe and worth using. That's where influencers like Jala step in. Jala's online content showcases his personal experiences with flying vehicles, bridging the gap between tech jargon and relatable storytelling. By turning complex tech into digestible posts, he's helping everyday consumers see the potential of daily air travel without feeling overwhelmed or intimidated. This kind of content may seem minor, but it plays a huge role in transforming flying cars from something Elon Musk might do into a real part of people's transportation choices. Even with China's aggressive push into the eVTOL sector, there's an ongoing debate. Is this innovation truly homegrown, or is China just buying into existing technologies? Record-breaking flights and certificates of approval. Even as skeptics continue to raise valid questions about safety, regulation, and infrastructure, Chinese companies are quietly racking up real-world victories in the race to commercialize flying vehicles. Autoflight, for instance, has already pulled off successful test flights between major cities, turning science fiction into demonstrable fact. These aren't concept cars spinning on an expo floor. They're actual aircraft covering actual ground, or rather, air. And then there's EHang, the company that's managed to leap ahead of the pack with a move that's hard to ignore. In a milestone that rewrote the rules of urban aviation in China, EHang became the first company in the nation to receive a national airworthiness certificate for its autonomous two-seater aircraft. That certification wasn't just a rubber stamp. It marked official recognition from regulators that EHang's technology was safe enough to carry human passengers in real-world urban environments. What makes EHang stand out, it isn't just its government approval, it's the design of its aircraft. These drone-like vehicles are built for short-distance city travel, and they operate without a pilot on board. That's not a cost-saving gimmick. It's a deliberate strategy to eliminate the need for specialized training, reduce human error, and slash operational costs across the board. Think of it like booking a rideshare, only this one lifts off vertically and gives you a skyline view on your way to work. And the demand is already there. With more than 1,200 pre-orders from customers around the world, EHang is betting big that air taxis will soon become as ordinary as hailing an Uber. Except instead of navigating traffic, they'll glide over it. Instead of waiting in gridlock, passengers will cut straight across cityscapes, and instead of hearing a horn behind you, you'll hear the whir of rotors above. The air car is about to get a new passport, and a Chinese manufacturer. Jiangshan, a rising force in the aerospace world, has secured the rights to produce and operate this Slovakian invention in a specific region of China. Unlike its electric vertical takeoff and landing cousins, the aircar still needs a runway. No dramatic vertical launches from your rooftop just yet. But while it lacks that sci-fi flair, it still plays a key role in China's broader game plan, turning the skies into commuter lanes. The fact that China is investing in something like the aircar, despite its old-school takeoff requirements, says a lot. It's not just about flashy tech or futuristic aesthetics. It's about building a full ecosystem. China wants to dominate every corner of the air mobility market, whether it's drones, eVTOLs, or, in this case, runway-hugging flying cars. And the air car isn't a novelty. This vehicle, once powered by a BMW engine, completed a successful 35-minute flight between two Slovakian airports in 2021. It transforms from car to plane in just over 2 minutes, which is probably faster than most people can parallel park. Meanwhile, companies like EHang are doing more than just taking off. They're signing deals. EHang has entered a memorandum of understanding with Xpang Tourism to develop China's low-altitude flying ecosystem. Basically, they're working to make flying cars part of your next vacation package. This is happening because China can move faster. Aviation consultant Steve Wright explained that Western countries are weighed down by decades of aviation regulations. Trying to fit new tech into old laws is like forcing a VHS into a Netflix account. China, on the other hand, has fewer regulatory relics to navigate. That flexibility gives it an edge. The big question is whether China can pull off the same global takeover it did with electric vehicles. Remember when EVs were a niche? Now, China is leading the pack, with more electric cars on the road than any other country. The same blueprint could work for flying cars. Acquiring foreign tech like the air car doesn't mean China is out of ideas. On the contrary, it shows China's ability to identify innovation, acquire it, and scale it. That's not theft, that's strategy. The country already leads in drones and battery production. Add that to a safety-first regulatory mindset, and you've got a powerful recipe for domination in the skies. While the air car has runway limitations, the real focus is integration. China isn't betting on just one type of flying vehicle. It's investing in a whole air travel ecosystem, from urban eVTOLs to longer-distance air cars. Local governments are helping too, offering strong support for test flights, infrastructure and research, especially in places like Guangdong, the home of drone powerhouse DJI. Affordability is part of the equation. Chinese companies like Autoflight are pushing for short-distance flights priced like ride-hailing apps. If flying cars cost the same as calling a Didi, people might actually use them, and with operating costs just 15% of what helicopters require, these aircraft could become more than a luxury for the ultra-rich. This isn't just a China story anymore. As these flying cars get cheaper and smarter, the rest of the world is starting to take notes. We're not just talking about shortcuts across Beijing. This could reshape traffic everywhere. Flying cars might not be in your garage yet, but they're definitely getting closer. So what do you think? Would you ride one? Drop your thoughts in the comments and we'll see you in the next one.